Okay, welcome everyone to our December Murmuration call. We are going to be talking today about Phenology annual reports. So we'll be sharing some tips and some of the resources available to you to put together a report. And then we have a few examples we can share. And I know there are some people on the call that have made some really wonderful annual reports. So I'll definitely invite you if you'd like to share any tips or anything that you have. We'll have some time for that. So I think I've met almost everybody here. I don't know Brendan if I've met Brendan. But my name's Erin Postumus. I'm the Partnerships and Projects Manager here. I'm joined by Erin Grady, who's our Engagement Coordinator. And so we definitely will have time for questions and things too, if anyone has them. Even not on the topic of annual reports, we'll have some time at the end for that. And I also invite you all, if you want to come to our Nature's Notebook nests. I know a lot of you do that already. Those are monthly calls that are more like an office hours style call, where we're available just to answer any questions you have or just talk about phenology. So definitely welcome you to join us for those. We will have one on January 5th, coming up right after the new year. So I actually have a document that I'm going to be sharing with some tips and the things that I'm going to be sharing about today. And I'll send you that in the follow-up call, or the follow-up email after the call. But I first wanted to start out with just kind of thinking about why you might want to do an annual report. So it really should be whatever is the most useful for you. I think some of the reasons we see value in putting together an annual report kind of at the end of the year is to look back at what you've done with your programs. And it really depends on, who your audience is for the report, kind of what the value ends up being. But if you were trying to put together something for your observers, you might want to think about putting in some details on their activity. They might be interested in learning about what you found with the phenology data. You might want to kind of call out certain observers that have contributed a lot, and just kind of do that summary of outreach activities. If the purpose of your annual report is more for maybe partners or funders, you could include the same kind of information, but you might have more of a general summary of the observation activity, and kind of sharing about the accomplishments that you had over the year. It's also a really great chance to check back in on any goals that you have. And so I wanted to make sure that I know a lot of you are probably already aware of this, but we do have a new guidance page for local phenology programs. And I'll put that link in the chat. And we have two documents on there that can really help with thinking about planning out a program. And so I know some of you, especially the people that took our course this last fall, are very familiar with these documents, but we have a handbook that kind of walks you through all the kind of infrastructure and the things about that you might want to know to set up a program. And then the workbook walks you through program planning exercises. So if you've undergone this process, you've thought about the goals that you have, you've thought about kind of a framing question that has to do with, what species you've selected and what you're trying to learn. And so an annual report can help you kind of check back in on those goals and do a written description or a visual description of what you've learned so far. Any questions so far or anything? How many of you have done program planning? You could either do a hand raise or do a emoji hand raise. Well, a lot of you probably have, yeah, there for sure. Our LPL students for sure. Yeah, getting a lot of thumbs. So a lot of you have. So you probably already have some goals in mind and you have, maybe certain questions that you're trying to answer. So that's a great place to start with your reports is to think about those and try to figure out what can you say about those things in your reports to kind of summarize your activity. Next thing I want to share is I'm going to put this in the chat as well, but I'll also share my screen. We've put together an annual report guide to try to help you think about like the things that might go into a report. I'm going to put that in the chat and then share my screen. And this is a little bit of an older document, so you'll notice there are a few things that are out of date. The couple of the visualization tool screen caps are a little bit older, but generally the content is pretty helpful. So I'm actually going to skip down to a section in here that's about kind of the potential components of a phenology report. So I'm going to scroll down to this. So this is kind of like a suggestion of things you might want to include in a report. You don't have to include all of these things. Don't feel like this is like a checklist of all of the things you have to put in there. Rather, we wanted to have this be like a guide of, if you wanted to focus on your observers and summarizing their activity, we have some information on how to use our tools to talk about the quantity of observations and also the activity of your observers, both as a group and then also individual observer activity. And then you can spend a lot of time thinking about the phenology data, and we'll be talking about how you can use the visualization tool for that. That's a way to actually put into a visual form, like what have you learned from your phenology data? We have a suggestion about if you're interested in including something about the weather, it might just be maybe you document, there was like a couple of big storms that hit us this year that might have impacted phenology. So you put some notes about that. Or you could do something that's a little bit more comprehensive where you actually pull together some information and like average temperatures or precipitation, how it kind of compares. That might be important context for what happened with phenology at your site. And then we have some guidelines on some results and interpretation. I think this is especially helpful to focus on if you are trying to kind of make progress towards answering certain questions. So if you had, for example, a question about, oh, I want to know if there's any mismatch between this plant that we're looking at and this pollinator, then you might want to pull together some visuals of your data and then start to try to see what do those data tell me? Am I starting to see mismatch? Does it look like there's pretty good overlap in the timing of these? And you can start to actually do some interpretation of those. It's good to also take this time to do some reflection. Maybe think about what worked really well for you this year. Maybe you held a training that was really popular, that worked really well. Maybe you did an outreach event that generated a lot of interest. Maybe you changed something about the way you're kind of recommending observers document something. Maybe offered some additional resources for some of the species you're tracking that help them. So you can put notes about all that stuff. You can also do a summary. This can be helpful for maybe if you're focusing your report more for funders or partners, you might do a description of all the outreach activities that you took, maybe the students that you engaged or something like that. And then we just have a couple other sections for kind of summarizing, maybe talk about what you're planning to do in the next year. It'll help you kind of think about your goals for the coming year. And then this is a section that we also have in our workbook, but thinking about anything you might want to document for maybe this is, we created this new map this year and it's stored here in this location, just details like that. So I know that was fast. So all of these different things are described in a lot more detail in this report. So you can see it's 44 pages, so it's got a lot. We're not going to go through all of it, but it's got a lot of detail about each of those things. So if you decide, oh, I really want to focus just on the phenology data this year and just really have some nice visuals and include some interpretation, you could just jump down to that section and read more about that. Okay, any questions about that? Has anyone used the report guide before? If not, that's fine. Take a look at it. You can always ignore whatever things are not useful to you. Just it's meant to be a guide, a menu of options. Okay, no questions so far. That's good. I can keep going.
Yeah, Erin, that's on the website, I take it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me show you just how you can find all of this stuff if you ever lose track of anything. What we try to do is we put all of the resources for local phenology programs in one spot. So I'm going to share my screen. So if you, for example, Rita and Steve, if you're trying to find your stuff, I would just start with your profile page. So one way you can find that is you would type in Master Gart. Oops, that's not how you spell it. Master Gardener. There we go. And you would find your profile on the map. And you can bookmark this page for yourself because this is going to be a good one. You always want to know where this is. So if you're an administrator and you're logged in, you will see all of these additional tabs here. And so you can always find under the resources all the things that are kind of like the most frequently used resources. So on the planning tab, this is where the report guide is linked. This is also where the program planning stuff also lives. So if you ever are like, where do I find this thing? Always start on your profile page because most likely it's linked on one of these tabs.
Great, good. Huh.
Right. Okay, and Claire and Sarah have used it. Great. I'm glad that you have, and we will work on updating it at some point so that it's totally up to date. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is, and we can actually go back to the profile page for this, is I wanted to talk about our dashboard that we have for local phenology programs for looking at observation and observer activity. So this can be really helpful for just pulling down some graphs about your program that are already made for you and plugging them right into your report. So I'm going to share my screen again. So if we're starting out with, I just clicked on this view profile for the Master Gardeners. We can look at that one here. So I'm back on the Master Gardeners Phenology group. And actually, even if you're not logged in as an admin, you can still see this data tab, but you'll probably see all of the tabs. So the link to the partner dashboard is here. And when you open that up, you get to this page on the NPN website. And there's a lot of stuff on here. So we're going to go through it piece by piece. But there's basically 3 different dashboards on here. The reason for that is the software that's behind this requires you like set it up a little bit differently. And so you have to kind of filter for your program 3 different times because we weren't able to have it be just one dashboard because of the kind of information here. So the first dashboard, dashboard number 1, is the observation quantity dashboard. So this one is all about the number of observations that you've made over the year. And if you've never seen this dashboard, just a couple things. This is manually updated by our director, Teresa, about every 2 weeks. So look on here for this last updated. She's really good about doing this every 2 weeks. But sometimes something breaks in the back end of this. So it might be a little out of date. You can always send us an email if that's the case. But if you're wondering, like, why is my data not in here? Just check this date to see if maybe it's because the dashboard hasn't updated. Another thing about this is it's defaulting to show a particular local phenology program. On dashboard 1, it's the Albuquerque Biopark Botanic Garden. So shout out to Carl. This is because you guys are amazing and collecting really consistent data. We like to highlight your program here. So you'll have to uncheck this and check your program in order to see what you have. And then also we have this year here. So that's something to keep in mind too. If you can go back to 2022. So if you wanted to do a report for the last 2 years, you can do that. We're just going to show 2025 for now. So let's say we're not actually doing the biopark, but we want to look at the master gardeners. So you start typing in, and then you should see your program come up. Make sure again that you uncheck ABQ because if you don't, then you'll get a combination of their program and your program. So uncheck and then recheck. So now I'm looking at the master gardeners. So they have a single site that they're tracking here. And then we can see across the year, this is the number of phenology records reported. So one thing that kind of stands out is you guys have a lot of data for the first 5 months of the year, and then it's a little bit lower for the rest of the year. Maybe it's like more observers in the springtime or just more visits because there's a lot of stuff going on. But this kind of shows you like how consistent were we across the year. And that could be by design, that's totally fine. It's not necessarily bad if it's not the same or about the same number throughout the year. It just tells you, oh, our effort was a little bit higher in terms of the number of data records recorded in the first part of the year. Any questions about that? Okay, so then we go down and we're still on dashboard one, so it's going to still show the master gardeners data. And so now we have a couple other things. There's a couple pie charts. This one shows the records by species. So there's a lot of different species that they're tracking at the master gardeners here. So we've got, and this actually shows you kind of the species that have the most data. This could be because they have more mesquite plants registered than other species, or these species or these individual plants received more visits. Either one of those, but there's more records for velvet mesquite, for monarchs. And I know you guys just saw a monarch up there, which is super exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then desert willow, and then blue palo verde. Those are kind of the ones that stick out to me as the most observed. And then there's some other ones like the scrubby mesquite, maybe the sotal, which have a little bit fewer observations. So is that about what you would expect, Rita and Steve?
Yeah, we just started doing the screw bean and there's just the one plant.
And then this pie chart is showing you the records by the phenophase category. So this is going to lump things like flowers or flower buds and open flowers and pollen release all kind of go into this flowers category. Reproduction is like all of the mating and territorial behavior kind of phases there. So you can see just kind of like lumping them by the type of life cycle stage. And then we can also see the number of site visits. So maybe, if we were looking at this one, it could be that there were, excuse me, more visits or just, I don't know, maybe more of the plants were observed on a particular visit during this part of the year. This graph here shows, how many actual site visits were made over the month. So it's a little bit more about the observation frequency than the other general graphic about the records. So it looks like your top month, you had 17 visits made in May. So that was definitely the highest month. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then it fell off in the summer, but we by plan reduced the number of visits due to the heat.
Uh-huh.
And then it looks like it's coming up a little bit in the autumn, but
Yeah.
hasn't quite reached the spring level.
Mhm. Yeah, so the way you might use this information is it could give you a signal that, oh, maybe I need to try to get more observers to come out. If by design, you're like, I'm not going to worry about stuff going on in the summer. There's not a lot going on with the phenology anyway where we need to be tracking it. That's totally fine. If you, however, were like, oh, actually, we did want to have more observations during the summer, this would be a signal where maybe you try to recruit some more people that can do that if you want to, or maybe you try to recruit some more people for the winter. This can just kind of help guide your efforts in making some adjustments. Or if you're happy with how it looks, then that's totally great too. It could also be a sign, if you're seeing less data than you thought, like maybe November is really low and I don't know why. Maybe you check in with your observers and you make sure everyone has synced their data on their phones if they're using the app, just to make sure there's not like a bunch of data stuck on someone's phone, and you can force that sync. And that is by going to that review screen to do that. So total overall visits were 91, which is really awesome. You guys did great. So if you would like to use any of this in your report, there's this little download button here. So you can click that and then you can either do an image, which should just give you this whole set of dashboards here, just in one image. So I can open that up. It should just be, let's see, slow. Yeah, so this is basically that whole dashboard. So if you wanted to plug this into a report, you could do something like, I'm gonna crop out, I just want the pie charts in there. Heck, so you could do something like, I'm gonna just use this stuff. I'm gonna crop this out. Kind of great. And then you could say like, I'm gonna save this as my like pie charts. And then you could do that for the other components too. Or you can download a PDF And this gives you some more options. You could say, I only want specific sheets from this. So I'm just going to say like, maybe I only want like the records by site and I want the site visits, and that's it, and download that. I think the PDF might be a little bit higher resolution too. We can take a look. So then you have this one. So if you wanted to just have this be like pages in your report, you'll have one on each of the pages. I did twice. And then this one, the site visits by. Any questions about that? And you can play around with, downloading all of them in the PDF or just one. You can do it as many times as you want.
Erin, I missed how you got to taking a picture. What was?
Yeah, it's on this little download button and
Okay.
it's at the bottom of dashboard 1. So there's one of these for each of the 3 dashboards. So
Okay.
I'm like, you look at dashboard 1, and this is kind of all of this as one dashboard until you get to here. This is like the bottom of this. It's called Tableau. That's the software that's behind this, and you can download it as either an image. I don't know what this is, like a spreadsheet, I guess. I don't know what that would look like. PDF or a PowerPoint. You probably don't want to do the Tableau workbook unless you have Tableau on your computer. But you could do any of these and include them in a report.
Okay, thank you. And
Sure.
while I'm unmuted, up at the top of this one, the very first thing, the numbers, I'm just curious, the year total is less than January. Why is that?
Oh, it's actually, so it's 11,000.
Oh,
The first one is like hidden kind of, it's maybe a little squished.
what is that red thing that's there?
I
Oh,
think
I
it's supposed to
see.
be a bar
It is a
representing,
bar. Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So there
Okay,
might be
cool.
a way if you like, how you can hold down control and do this. Oops, I might just mess it up, but that might be a way to kind of like redo the orientation a little bit. But yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? I don't see anything in the chat. Should we go to the next one? So does anyone want to volunteer your program for the observer activity dashboard? We can look at a different one.
Well, if nobody else will go, check out Prescott Creek's.
Okay. Oh, and look, Grace, we updated your name. I was going to email you about
Oh,
that.
that's beautiful. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Yay. Oh, Michael will be so happy.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so on here we have the active observers by month. So it looks like this was Grace. Grace, just the one observer for most of the year. I don't know who else was joining you in April and May, but you've got up to 5 now for the
I did
last half of the year,
I
which is
did a
amazing.
couple of I did a couple of trainings in April and May. They went nowhere. So then we were back to one.
Uh-huh.
Back to just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, then yeah, I got some other people involved.
Yeah. And the grand total should be unique observers. So hopefully that checks out. And this is you've had 8 different observers over the year
Yeah.
that have, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then that's hopefully pretty self-explanatory. So the next one here is the activity by observer. So this corresponds to the numbers here, and I can talk about how you figure out who your person ID is. But I'm assuming, Grace, that you are the orange, and so this is your efforts over the course of the year. So if it wasn't you, maybe you had like one observer who was really doing awesome. You might want to call them out. Maybe this could be a way you could say, like, this is our observer of the year. Want to give a special award to this observer and kind of call out their effort. So you could give an award to yourself, Grace, if you want to.
Woohoo.
It's also a way to see, maybe you had someone who was doing this well, and then all of a sudden they dropped off and you didn't actually realize that was happening. That could be a way to say, oh, I'm going to figure out who that is and just check in and see, like, is everything okay? Can I like give you anything to support you, to try to help out, and just get you back observing with us. So I'm going to jump over to show you how to find this information. So you'd want to keep track of the person ID that you want to look up. So maybe like you would write that down or just put it in a document or be able to reference it. And then you'll want to go back over, and I'm actually going to pick a different program because I don't want to show the emails for the master gardeners here, but I'm going to show one of our U of A ones here. So if I was going to try to figure out a person ID, I'm going to come to my profile page. So you'd be going to yours, Grace, and then you go to the members tab and manage members. And this again is for only administrators. And so here I see a bunch of U of A people that are registered as members in this program. So I can see, and I know this is a little confusing, but the observer ID is the same thing as the person ID. So that's where you're going to see this information. And if you want to be able to easily find without having to, if you have a lot of people, without having to click through and like check each of these, which one is my person ID that I'm looking for, just download your program roster, this link right here, and that'll match up the email, the username, and the person ID or observer ID, and you can easily find your person that way. Any questions about that?
So I've actually done this, and the program roster doesn't have people's names on it.
Does it have emails?
It might have emails.
It should have emails and usernames. It doesn't always have, we don't always have names for people. It's an optional thing when they register. So likely we don't have, it's probably not in the output fields or file, but it should have at least their email and their username. But let me know if that's not the case.
Okay.
And then this last thing on the second dashboard is basically the same as this one. It's just giving you, instead of the line over the course of the year, it's like a total, the number of records reported. So this would be something if you wanted to highlight Grace in your recognition email, you would say, Grace recorded 3,351 observations this year at our site. And you could use that for the volunteer recognition. Okay, any questions? All right, the last one on here is just a single dashboard, and this one is looking at your registered observers by year. So this one, for some of you, it might not be relevant yet, but for a program like we have this one highlighted, the Science of the Seasons, they're one of our longest running programs. They've been active since 2009, which was basically when we launched Nature's Notebook. And you can see the years where they had huge training effort, big events where they recruited a whole bunch of people, where they had newly registered observers. And this is actually both active and not active observers. So it's really a way to see like how many people signed up for your program. And so it might be a way to keep track of trainings and kind of the effectiveness of different things that you did over the year. So that would probably be the main use of this one. And again, you can download these things by each of these has this little download button. So an image, PDF, PowerPoint, you can do that for this dashboard and also for this observer activity. Questions?
I guess we'll have to give it a try one of those.
No? All right. So the next thing I wanted to look at is the visualization tool. And we won't have a chance to go through all the different things you can do in the tool, but I'm going to try to show just how to make a phenology calendar. And if you want to learn more about the Viz tool, we are going to do a session on this, a Viz tool workshop in our LPL virtual conference. So just a plug for that. I'm sure Erin G will put that in the chat. So I know a lot of you are already registered, but make sure you register. And yes, we would love to have you part of that. I think the Viz tool, which day is that? The workshop? Wednesday?
That would be
Thursday?
Friday morning for Pacific people and afternoon for Eastern. And we just added our speakers to the website, so you can get a sneak peek on some of our panelists and session leads.
Yeah. Really excited about that. It's the schedule is really coming together, and we have some people on the call today that are going to be session leaders and speakers. So thank you so much for volunteering to do that. We're really excited to learn from you all. Okay, let's talk about the Biz tool then. And just remembering that in the Phenology report guide, we have a lot of guidance on how to use different types of visualization. So maybe I'll just hop back over to that really quick and we find that section. We tried to have include all the different types of visuals that you have to work with in the Viz tool. So there's scatter plots, there's calendars, there's a map tool. We didn't actually even cover activity curves in here, but that's another great option. So this kind of discusses how to interpret the information that you might be displaying in something like a phenology calendar, and some potential uses, different ideas for comparing species, their phenophases between years, comparing species to each other. So to compare a way to compare different sites to each other. So there's lots of ideas in here about ways that you can use the Viz tool.
Music.
Okay, so I'm going to pop back over to the Viz tool. So if you haven't explored the Viz tool before, you're definitely welcome to check out the landing page on here. It's meant to be kind of a tutorial, so you could click on any of these, see visualization, and it'll give you an example, and then it'll tell you how to interpret what you're seeing, and then ways to kind of change the settings on it to view different things. But if you just want to do your own exploring, you can dive right into the Data Explorer. If you wanted to summarize information like across the whole state, or for a larger region, I would start here, and then you could pick the calendar, and then you can plot things. What I'm actually going to do though is I'm going to start from a local phenology program, so I can show you how to do that way to get in here where you have a custom link to only show your program's data. So does anyone want to volunteer your program for us to look at and make a calendar for?
Sure.
Okay. And if we have time, we'll get to another one too. Okay, so we're going back to the Master Gardeners in Tucson. So again, go to the Data tab, and then instead of we're looking at the dashboard before, we're going to go to Visualize Program Data. And so once you get here, you'll see, if you look at the URL, you'll see there's a group ID on here. And that's actually telling you that now we're looking at a kind of a filtered view of the Viz tool just for this particular program. So that's one sign that that's there. And then once we pick calendar as the type of visualization, we'll actually see the name show up on the left. So those are just ways to know that you're in the right place looking at your program. So the first thing, you can skip over the boundary. It's asking you if you want to kind of narrow down based on the geography. We don't need to do that because we're only looking at the Master Gardener's data, and it's already at a certain scale. Then we can decide if we want to look at just this year or if we want to add multiple years. You can always come back and add more years later. If we're doing an annual report, I probably would just include this year, but if you wanted to, start to show some data for multiple years and kind of look at how things might be different in this year versus other years, you could add on many years if you want to. But we're going to just do 2025 for now. What species would you guys like to plot? Or we can do more than one. We can do up to 3 different species, or we can do 3 phenophases for one species.
Yeah, desert willow.
Okay. What phenophase would you like to plot?
Flowers, open flowers.
Okay. And then we can give it a color. I'm going to do this color. A lot of them are this color. I don't know if yours is white or magenta. But... And then would you like to add another phenophase for desert willow, or would you like to add a different species?
Leaves, new leaves.
How about another phenophase? How about new leaves?
Okay. We're going to do young leaves.
Young leaf.
And then we can do one more if you want to.
Um, falling leaves.
Okay.
Or fruit.
Leaves or fruit?
Yeah.
Which
Fruit.
one?
Yeah, fruit.
Okay. Ripe fruit or any fruit?
Yeah.
Any fruit.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do maybe like a brownish color for that. Okay, and then we hit next. Okay, so we are now looking at the 3 phenophases for Desert Willow that you guys picked out. And you'll see the months across the bottom here. So we have January over to December. Each of these lines represents when you said yes for this phenophase for at least one of your plants. We don't know which Desert Willow. I know you guys have multiple, like 4 or 5,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
So this is kind of showing you across all of them what you're observing. So you can see there are reports for fruits starting from the beginning of the year all the way through to November. The young leaves start in early March and they go through November. And then in May is when the open flowers are there.
Yeah. That looks right.
Great. So this is, it's a nice way to see when did things happen on this plant or all plants, I guess, at your site. And then it also is a way to kind of look for any problems. So you guys think like, oh, this looks good. Maybe if you would have like an open flower report here in January, you might have wondered, oh, is that a mistake? Someone's finger slipped on the app. Maybe I should fix that. But it looks pretty good. You can also add the negative data, that's the no observations. So this is a nice way to show that you were looking for open flowers in the early months and you didn't see any.
Mhm.
And then you had some interspersed no's, probably because you had the different plants and like some of them were leafing, but maybe others weren't yet, or some of them had finished. So because it gets a little messy when you're looking at multiple plants together here. But it's okay. It shows you that there were some activity of leaves on some of the plants from this period. It also shows kind of the frequency of your observations again and kind of how regular your observation visits were, which is very regular. You can see you guys are going out at least once a week, more often than that sometimes, through, especially in the spring. And that's where we see that concentrated effort kind of that we saw in the Tableau graph too, with a little bit less data in June, July, and then picking up again in October.
Mhm.
So if you want to include this in your annual report, you can just hit this little download button here, and that will save it on your computer. If you want to say like, oh, these labels are kind of small, there's settings here where you can increase the size and make it a little bit bigger. You can like move it up if you don't want it right next to the bands. You can actually like make the band smaller or like really big. That doesn't work. That doesn't look good. Maybe if you only had one, it would be okay. But you can kind of play around with that and then say, oh, I like this better. I'm going to download that and like stick it in my report. I would say I wanted to kind of just show you how to use the calendar, but you should first think about what you might want to show. And that can be guided by the goals that you have outlined in your program plan, or if there's like particular species you want to highlight. There's no one great way to do that. I would say you can let your observers guide it if you feel like there's like certain species that your observers are really interested in. Maybe that kind of lets you know which species to pick to include in your report. Maybe you want to do a visual for every one of the plants you're tracking. If you're only tracking a few, wouldn't necessarily recommend that for everything if you have a large species list. Or you can combine different species on a single calendar as well.
Is it possible to show on the same graph what your pattern of, say, fruits was compared to everybody else in the universe that's turning in data for those species?
Yeah, you can't do it on the same graph, but you could make 2 graphs and you could put them right next to each other. Or if you want to get more creative, you could like bring the calendars into something like PowerPoint or Canva and crop them and kind of like stick them together and make it look like we did that in one of these examples, this one here actually, where we did this twice. We did a calendar for the San Francisco area. We did a calendar for the LA area, and then we like put them together kind of artificially in PowerPoint, so that it looks like, you can easily compare them. And for that, you just want to be careful about lining up the dots that represent like the year if you're gonna stick them on top of each other.
Yeah.
Which was mine? Oh, this one. Okay. Yeah, so if you wanted to do that comparison, I would open up the Viz tool in another window like I did here, where you don't go from your program, or I guess you could, if you wanted to stay in this window, you make sure you download the one you have here, and then you could X this off, which removes the filter for your program. And then it actually just gave you the same calendar for everything.
Uh-huh.
At that point, you might want to say like, well, I really only want to see like comparison of our information to like everyone else in Southern Arizona.
Uh-huh.
If you wanted to do that, you could go to the boundary and do a hand-drawn boundary and say like, I'm actually just going to do like this part of Arizona.
Oh, I see.
And then it'll kind of upload again, and then we can go back over and see. And so this could be your comparison. It is going to include your own data. It's not able to like exclude, unless you like draw a box where you don't include your part of Tucson. But this could be a way you could download this and then have those side by side and show how your data kind of compares to everyone's.
Okay, that's cool. And you can do that with the activity curve too.
Yep. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, let's maybe we can do one more of these. Does anyone else want to volunteer your program to look at?
Well, how about the time to restore Texas? Just
Okay, yeah.
grab David's stuff since he's not here.
Good. He's off having fun birding. Okay, so we've got it here. Time to restore. And time to restore is actually one of our kind of funny local phenology programs called a personal site network, which means it's actually not just one or two sites where everyone contributes data. It's a bunch of personal sites that are linked together because everyone's part of this effort where they're picking species off a single list and they kind of are guided by trainings and under a single project. So it's going to probably look a little bit different, but we've got people all across the state, more concentrated in more of the urban areas, but pretty good coverage. So we can go ahead and look at that data. So we're going to open up the Viz tool again. And now I have you see a different group ID up at the top. So Tina, what do you think we should look at for the species?
Let's do the bergamot or the Monarda fasciculosa. That's on your top list, top 8. So we'll see what we do.
Yeah. And this actually, another thing to point out, this list of species, you'll see it's not alphabetized. It's actually in the highest, or the species with the most data to the least.
Oh, we can do beautyberry if you like.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah, so you can see with the master gardeners, we did desert willow, and that was actually at the top of their list because they have a lot of data on that one. So yeah, we can do beautyberry. What phenotypes do you want to look at?
Well, let's do the same 3: leaves, flowers, and let's do ripe fruit though.
Okay, beautiful fruit. White flowers.
I actually have some observations to upload on that one. I have about 3 weeks worth. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I know they're not. I'll do the yellow because they're kind of whitish, right? We'll just do that.
Yeah.
They're like purplish, right? Like, let's see if we have a good purple. How about this one?
Really red. Yeah. Reddish purple. Yeah. All right.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So we've got a lot of yes reports for the leaves. And then we've got our flower reports mostly concentrated in the late of the spring and early summer. And then
right.
we've got fruits. Yeah. So this, I don't know what to think about these fruits. It could be that there's fruits at this time of year. I don't know if that's like totally unusual.
Very unusual.
Yeah.
Maybe in somebody's greenhouse, but yeah, so
Maybe,
I
yeah.
would suspect that one.
Yeah, so that might be something if this was your, your program, you might want to check on those records. Um, a way to do that, we don't have a super easy way to do this, but the way that I would probably do it is I would remember that this was in early February, like what,
Mhm.
February
Out
3rd?
middle, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the little 34 you can see on there is like the day of year.
Oh,
I
okay.
would remember, okay, it's February 3rd, and then I would download a data file with the observer ID included. And then I
Okay.
would look for that observation and try to remember or write down the person ID. And then I'd go back to that roster and I would reach out to that person and say, like, hey, we saw that there was an observation for yes for ripe fruits in February. Do you remember, did that happen? Or do you like not remember that happening at all? Maybe it was a just an error. Obviously it's better to do this earlier in the year, when the person's memory is more fresh. So that's, I guess, the drawback of doing this at the end of the year.
Or
But
they
you
did, they
could
saw
just
some
see,
on the
yeah, or
ground.
maybe they were like, yeah, I took a picture of it. It was really crazy. I saw this ripe fruit on this plant. And maybe that's fine. And they can, or you can look at their comment too. And maybe they said, like, I know this is weird, but we see this on the plant, and that can be helpful.
Okay.
And you can see that in the data file too. And then again, we can add the negative data, the no records. So nice to see this like super consistent. Like we basically have a report for all across the year. This is over the whole state of Texas, so we might want to narrow it down. And you can always, even though it's already filtered for time to restore Texas, if we wanted to say like, actually, let's narrow this down. Let's just compare like the Houston area and see if and you could do that and then compare it to the Dallas Fort Worth area if you wanted to do that
Okay.
and kind of see if things are different. Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So I would you can always just dive in and start playing around with your own data. But I think a more effective way might be to think about, what do you want to visualize in your report? It could be, again, based on like the questions that you've outlined that you're trying to answer. It could be you want to plot your most observed species that your observers are really excited about. Or maybe it's some other reason. But I would think about like, what are the things I want to plot this year? What are the species? What are the phenophases? And then you can have kind of a more of a guide as you come in here to know what to pick. You can always plot more than one species on these. So if I wanted to, for example, I'm going to change this to something else. I could say like, I want to look at, maybe it's flowering instead of leaves, but I want to look at flowering timing for a bunch of species, or I guess it's up to 3, but you could do a number of these calendars and just put, flowering for a few different species, and then have a nice phenology calendar that shows flowering timing over the year. Like that. It really shows the eastern redbud being so early in the year. Cool. Any questions? Okay. I did want to make sure, if is there anyone that wants to share an example of a report? I do have a few, including one of Claire's from Earthwise Aware to share. But I would welcome you to do that if you want to kind of share yourself some examples so people can see what a report might look like.
If the Earthwise one is the one that you showed us in our class, it's a little intimidating.
It is. Okay. Oh, Sarah, yeah, do you want to share? That would be great.
What did you say?
Oh, well, Claire said that your report is wonderful, but a little bit intimidating.
In
And
what
maybe
sense? In what sense is it intimidating, if I may ask?
Okay, so I said that, and the reason is I was thinking about making a report, and I looked at yours, and I was like, oh, there is no way. Because I'll tell you in specifics, it's the different pieces and the whole thing are made by a bunch of different people,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's just me.
Yeah.
So I can't do all that. So
No, but that's fine, and you don't need to either.
exactly.
Right. The
Exactly.
reason as part of our, by the way, as part of our reporting or creating a report, it's also a way for us to involve the community, our communities of leaders, our volunteers, to give them a chance to exercise this kind of skill as well. And of course, we mentor them. We're all volunteers, by the way. So
Right?
that's a kind of a collective exercise that we do here.
So I did appreciate seeing it, but I did feel like this was aspirational rather than something I could actually pull off right now by
But
myself. So
but no, but thank you. I'll report the compliment to our community. They will love it.
great.
Yeah, and you can also, you can use that kind of example as a guide as well. You don't have to include all of the different things there. I think I really like the Earthwise Aware reports because they spend a lot of time on the natural history and like showing beautiful photographs. So you could just kind of try to emulate that part of it without doing all of the data summaries and visualizations. Or you could just use that as a guide for maybe just that part and look at, maybe I can make a graph like this one. So yeah, don't feel like you have to do something that's as comprehensive as that, but I think it's a really nice example of what we aspire to. Well, we have a couple people that want to share. That's wonderful. Yeah, Sarah, do you want me to share a screen with this one? You can also, everyone should be able to share a screen if you want to do it, but I'm happy to share it on my screen. Let me pull it up here. Okay, I got it. Let me share. All right, do you want to talk us through this?
Uh, yeah, sure. So yeah, this was my last year's report, and this was the first year I think that the project was operational. I have to say their first volunteer training was in September, so the data isn't too spectacular, but actually, yeah.
Nice.
But I
That's
included
great.
a little piece on who we are as an organization. I work for the Allegheny Land Trust, so this project is based in Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, um, and just a little
Mhm.
info of what we are, what we did. Um, so Barking
Great.
Slopes is about 151 acres, and we have a little trail set up along just a section of that with about, oh, I think we had around 14-ish, 14 to 18 plants and a box turtle that we are observing.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, Barking Slopes has a huge human history behind it. It used to be a mine site. It actually has some of the structures still present on the property, and it is located right across from a power plant. And it's just very interesting with all of this human history that Barking Slopes has such a rich flora and faunal biodiversity. Um, and so that's something we are monitoring, and the project itself is in partnership with Carnegie Museum of Natural History's Mason Eberling, um, because he and his team were doing a lot of research in this area, so we thought the project would be a good fit. So,
Great. Wonderful photo.
and those are our markers.
Uh-huh. Very nice.
That's what we were, and I also added a little um, fluorescent flag, some flagging along there because Barking Slopes can get a little bit overrun with knotweed, and that just helps these
Yeah.
stay visible.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, we had 18 species. So. And from our project, we actually developed some more programming around it and included it in pieces of other programs. So, um, yeah.
That's awesome. And so you made this and oh, there's one of the
hmm
screen caps. Wonderful. Oh, and there's another, the pie chart. Hopefully this looks familiar to everybody. Records by species. Uh-huh, and Phenology calendar. Very cool. So you made this in Canva, looks like.
hmm
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, so Canva, we've talked about Canva before. We talked about it in our newsletter, Murmuration. It's a great tool. There's a free option. If you're with a nonprofit, you even have access to the pro version of it for free. So really great resource for making things like this. This is great. I love the photos. Got a lot of different graphics in here.
Yeah, and our three knotweed species.
Oh, and you have climate data. So you just pulled this from the NOAA website?
Yep.
Very nice. Yeah, and again, like, don't have to include all of these components, but this is a really nice summary of a lot of different aspects of the report. Very cool. And you have your lessons learned. Oh, cute fox turtle. Brain bud. I like that. Oh, this is so cool.
Thank you.
Very nice. Cookies.
That's often what I use for to really reel people in.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Thanks so much for sharing that. That's so great.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Brendan, do you want to share? Do you want me to share my screen or would you like to?
You can go ahead, Aaron. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Cool. What is this? Oh, it's Google Drive. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, so this is we do an end of year phenology report for the Morton Arboretum, where we're looking at in 2023 it was just over 600 trees. I think it's grown to about 800 by this year.
Wow.
Uh, so we this report is produced primarily for an internal audience in our science and conservation department.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not meant to draw any conclusions. It's just meant to be kind of a record of what phenologically happened as well as what meteorologically happened, and then perhaps some of the drivers of phenological change that we see throughout the year. So we start with, of course, purpose and motivation, and then we do our overview of just how many observations we had. So it was 34,410 sets of observations. There's a small typo there. That's going to bother me, but it's 2 years old. I can't do anything about it.
That's all right.
So we
That's
start with
impressive. That's a lot of data.
there's a lot of data that we're crunching through. Yeah, and from there we basically go into some of those outstanding things. 2023 was a mast year out in the Chicagoland area. We believe we had another mast year this year. So we talk about how that may shift some of the phenological timing, but we're not doing an exhaustive statistical analysis
Mhm.
based on this year versus any other year.
Huh.
That's not the purpose of the report. And then, yep, we go into those abiotic factors. Now, I should note that we do a lot of our our data crunching in our studio, the app. So we don't we tend to push our phenological observations to Nature's Notebook at the end of the year. And we have everything in-house so we can better utilize those data throughout the year for quality assurance and quality control, and then just to have any like snap observations of what's been going on with the oaks, for
Mhm.
example. So yeah, you can just scroll through. This is how we're going through temperature. We're going through growing degree days, and then we talk about in our region how the average temperature may have deviated from the mean, and we do that also with precipitation as well.
Mhm.
And then we kind of break down our phenophases by leafing phenophases and then reproductive phenophases. So we're primarily observing three different genera of trees, maples, oaks, and elms.
Mhm.
So we're looking at how an individual year compared to every other year. And we're doing it right now just on like, hey, what was the day that we first saw leaf buds breaking? What was the mean day of leaves increasing in size?
Mhm.
These collections for every other year. Um, so yeah, that's
Very cool.
basic report.
Nice.
Is
You've
it-
even got intensity data in here. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. One of the long-term goals is I would like to be building this report in Markdown and HTML because I've managed to get animations of a bunch of these figures, so you
Hmm.
can actually see the change through time animated.
That's awesome.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions about our report, I'm happy to to answer them.
Yeah, the conclusion. Nice.
Do you
Great
ever work
photos.
with do you ever work with students? This is such a wonderful data set. I can just imagine so many projects from this.
We actually have started to work with students. So one of the problems with students that we've had is, they can work in the summer, but fall and spring are a little tricky for them. But we've managed to figure that out where we'll have students coming in for selective days in the fall, just monitoring phenology. And we've recently partnered with the Adler Planetarium. Our student volunteer coordinators partner with the Adler Planetarium, utilizing some of their phenology data that they collect in conjunction with, or phenology data we collect in conjunction with phenology data the Adler collects on trees near the planetarium, which is right on the lake in Chicago, if you guys are familiar. And it's a very urban area, and there are lamps or street lights lining this boulevard leading the planetarium. So the Adler wants to understand how light pollution may affect leaf timing. So they are working with our students to kind of put together this phenology data set. And our lab has sat in and advised a couple of times on how they can be collecting data. And they do everything on Nature's Notebook, and we always refer them back to your protocol because that's the protocol we use. And it's incredibly sound. It's incredibly useful. A quick anecdote: a young lady in the program, I did the presentation on phenology data, and she was like, "This seems so simple. Shouldn't it be more scientific?" And I was like, "If you want to make it more scientific, you can, but just because it's simple, it doesn't mean you can't get great, important data from this. Sometimes the most simple observations are the backbone of the most powerful, uh, uh, transformative data studies you see out there. So they're because the protocol is so easy to understand, so well thought out, so well designed, they're using it in ways that we hadn't even considered. Like the Adler, for example, is using it to look at light pollution in trees. Who knew?
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
You're welcome, Erin. You're welcome.
that's great. Thank you. Well, I think we're gonna have to leave it there. I see, Mac, you had a report to share. If you want to send that to me, I can include that in the follow-up email so we can have another example for people to look at. That would be great. And if anyone else has reports that you'd like us to include in that summary, we'd love to have more examples. So feel free to share. Thank you all for coming to our Murmuration. If I don't see you again, I hope you have a happy holiday, and we'll see you in the new year, hopefully at our nest on the 5th or at the virtual conference coming up later in January. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See
you.
you later.
Happy
Bye.
holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Bye.